Sure, people will slowly trickle in, but welcome. Thank you all for joining us this morning for the online learning opportunity hosted by the Community Resilience Partnerships Regional Coordinators and Community Partners. This series, entitled Building Stronger Communities, is designed for communities already enrolled in the Community Resilience Partnership, those who are currently enrolling and those who are interested in enrolling. If you'd like to learn more about the Community Resilience Partnership, we are putting a link in the chat to the partnership website. Please note that today's event is being recorded for later viewing as well. Today, we are joined by solar installers, service providers, and state officials who will walk through the development of municipal solar projects in Central Maine. But first, let me introduce myself and today's presenters. My name is Olivia Kunish. I am the environmental planner at Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, otherwise known as KBCOG. I am also joined by Community Resilience Partnership Region 3 Coordinator, Zach Goslin, who's handling all of our tech today. Our presenters are Scott Vaughn, the Executive Director for the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy in Norway, Maine. Scott sees a profound need to rapidly relocalize and solarize our economy to help future generations and wild nature thrive in the face of increasing climate instability and resource depletion. Scott is a professional photographer and writer and spent many years documenting the organic seed movement. He also teaches and practices permaculture design, builds with local timber, and worked for many years as a market gardener. Our next presenter is going to be Danny Piper, the owner of Sundog Solar, one of the most experienced solar development and installation firms in Maine. Danny has engaged in the development, engineering, and supervision of the installation of hundreds of solar energy systems throughout the state. He holds the distinction of both a NAB CEP PV professional certification and a NAB CEP solar heating installer certification, as well as carrying his universal refrigeration certification. His experience includes 20 years of construction, carpentry, mechanical, and electrical design and installation work. He has been engaged in both the residential and C&I sectors of the industry, providing a wealth of insight over the years into Maine's unique development opportunities and challenges. Danny devotes himself to his young family and homestead in Searsport, growing organic food and playing in the great outdoors. He is always looking for the next opportunity to positively impact our environment and contribute to the transition of a sustainable and renewable future. And our final presenter, Matt Young, who has been with the Department of Environmental Protection for over 20 years, the last 7 of which have been dedicated to landfill closure. Since 2015, Matt has licensed the majority of the state's landfill solar installations. Matt holds a Bachelor of Science degree and aquaculture degree from the University of Maine. And before we get started, here are just a few Zoom reminders. We encourage you to add questions in the chat as they come up for you, or hold them until the question and answer portion at the end of all the presentations. But the Zoom etiquette, stay on mute unless you're speaking. Keep your video off if you have something distracting going on. Rename yourself if your Zoom name doesn't show the name that you identify yourself as. And so a quick overview of our format for this morning. We're going to start off with Scott first, sharing about his solar project in Norway. And then we'll move to Danny's presentation about his project going on in Oakland. And then Matt will cover solar landfill permitting. And at the end, we'll do the question and answer session. So we will move into Scott's presentation now.
I'm going to share my screen here, so that works. Okay, can you guys see that? Oops. You guys see that screen okay?
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm not an expert in landfill community solar stuff, but we have this project going on in Norway that has been evolving over the last couple of years, and I'll share some of the learnings from that and a little bit of the trajectory of what we've been going through. And this predates our CB's role as a service provider in the CRP. So essentially, I'm just going to kind of go through a rough timeline here. We started this project a couple of years ago when Vaughn Woodruff and Tyler Adkins reached out to me, and Vaughn was the director of InSource Renewables at the time, or the CEO of that, which was a worker co-op, and I had met Vaughn through the co-op kind of ecosystem through Cooperative Development Institute. CB's been doing a lot of co-op work, and then Tyler's a developer, and they teamed up, and they had this. They reached out to us, and they had this idea to find Vaughn, being involved in the co-op movement, wanted to get food co-ops onto solar, and also was really already concerned about the lack of labor in the solar movement, and wanted to also have this project be a training thing. So anyway, they reached out to us. I reached out to the town. We knew that there was a sealed landfill over behind the transfer station in Norway. It turns out Norway owns the land. It's the Norway South Paris landfill, but Norway actually owns the land. So we reached out to them and identified that as a site, and we worked through the select board, and the select board approved that. And then shortly after we got this project kind of up and running, InSource ended up merging with Revision and pulled out of the project. So we've been working directly with UGE on this. So UGE in the town of Norway cut a deal. It wasn't exactly what I had hoped for. I was hoping that the town would actually own the project and kind of lock in the energy costs for the town over a period of time, and then also subscribe the rest of the thing. The way it worked out is UG is the developer of the project, and they're ending up have a power purchase agreement with the town, which is not a fixed cost. It's tied to the standard offer. Interconnection agreements with CMP and the permitting have taken a long time to sort out. Especially the interconnection agreement. And I don't know all the details, and some of you probably know more about this than I do, but there was a time right about when CMP was saying, they kind of threw in the towel there on more solar siting. As soon as that, CB spent a lot of time. We've been working on community solar stuff for years and spent a lot of time on that policy work back in 2019. And as you all know, when the policy changed and we really kind of opened the floodgates for community solar, CMP was fairly overwhelmed. And they kind of had an agreement and retracted. And I know that UGE had a lawsuit that involved this project and a couple of other projects to get CMP to honor their original agreements. And anyway, they worked through, got the interconnection agreements, and there's been a lot of permitting issues, but they've got that all sorted out now. Our role in this now is really, we were the liaison between the town and UGE initially. And so once that's been all straightened out, we're just contracted by UGE to subscribe local businesses. We had a lot of connections in the local community, which helped a lot to basically a lot of them are Main Street businesses. We can walk in the door, talk to them about community solar, and kind of explain it, because there's still just a ton of confusion out there around it. So we've ended up filling the solar farm with other subscribers beyond the town. So now all those contracts are signed with UGE. They are about to begin construction on that. Anytime. I know they've got a lot of equipment stockpiled. They're probably waiting for some snow to melt a bit before they attack this, because there's a couple of feet of snow on the site right now. One of the other things that didn't happen was Vaughn Woodruff really wanted to work with the tech school and establish some sort of program that tech school could, students could work on this project. That didn't happen, but around the same time, I joined the tech school board, and the tech school has launched an electrical program. They have an apprenticeship program, And they're actually just got funding to build a building on campus on the Oxford Hills Comprehensive High School campus that's going to be electrical and plumbing training center. So we're still hoping that some of our kids that are in this electrical program can get down there and get some hands-on experience with this project as it goes. And the last I've heard from UGE, they're hoping to get this up and running late in the second quarter of 2023. So in a few months, hopefully we'll have power flowing out of this. So this ended up being a kind of a lot more than just some power for us, for the town. So like I said, one of the original things was to get our food co-op on renewables, and that's that principle 6 of the cooperative development principles. And that's why Vaughn was like, he was a co-op, he was very involved in the co-op movement, wanted to get all of our food co-ops kind of on stabilized renewable energy stuff. So we did that. Co-op was the first subscriber. Like again, this training opportunity for local tech school was part of the program, getting some of our local businesses onto green power and at a discounted rate. Converted landfill has been a liability for the town ever since it was closed, which I don't know how long that's been, but quite a while. Which they had to mow it and deal with insurance and stuff. We also wanted to get the town off of fossil fuels. The town's a fairly big energy user, getting more so that we've been installing. We have some EV charging in town now that's drawing a lot of power. We've had a little bit of solar offset there, but not nearly enough. Unfortunately, their wastewater treatment plant is their biggest consumer of power, but they already had a long-term contract. It's also providing a little bit of income for CB because we're getting paid a penny a watt actually to subscribe this thing. So it could be close to $10,000 of income for CB. And also to increase the biodiversity on the site. There's UGE is talking about pollinator habitat on there, which now it's just a kind of a weedy spot that they mow twice a year. So some of the functions beyond just getting some clean power onto the grid. This is probably going to be a little redundant. Oh, I can't seem to advance my slide here. I had another slide about this. I moved the screen and now it's not letting me advance my slide. Oh, it's weird. Let's see what happens here. There we go. I'm sure this is not news to you folks, but I'll just kind of recap a little bit. Why the landfill. The landfills are kind of prized as some of the best sites for solar. This one's, not huge, but big enough to get a project. And I've got a little map I can show you, but, you can't do anything on these landfills. You can't put housing, you can't grow stuff out there, you can't make rec fields, etc. Like I said, it's a liability for the town between the mowing, insurance, and other issues. And one of the good things about it is because it's right behind our transfer station and they have been servicing this, there's existing road access and there's 3-phase power right there too. So this is a really optimal site. This is this is a bit of a map. You can see that big water treatment plant up there. There's been talk about trying to integrate some solar into that, like cover that with solar. And I know that's being done in other places. There's some questions here about the weather, ice, wind, that kind of stuff. Where that mark is there, you can see that big field, that's the site, that's the transfer station off to the left. That's a little Androscoggin River that runs right below there. This is the design that UGE has come up with. There's close to a couple thousand panels there. There's the main landfill, and there's another little landfill over on the side that's got a south-facing slope, so they're going to put some stuff over there as well. And that's that wastewater treatment plant up to the top. And then this is basically the sizing of it. It's just under a megawatt of nameplate DC, and expected to produce about 1.2 gigawatts of electricity annually. Yeah, that's that project. Again, it's not a CB project per se. We've been kind of one of the players in it, and once it's up and running, UGE will be managing the project. So that's that.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. And next up, we'll be hearing from Danny and his project going on.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me get my screen shared here. Okay, so my name is Danny Piper from Sundog Solar. I'm one of the owners here. We've been in operation since 2009, developing solar projects around the state of Maine. We do both residential, commercial projects, both for different commercial property owners as well as municipalities and some nonprofits. So I have this image here on my first slide, just kind of showing we've all witnessed here in the state of Maine the last few years solar development taking place, and some examples of good siting and some examples of bad siting. I think we've all observed, and one controversial conversation is just siting solar on prime land, so usable agricultural land versus landfills. So it's a good prelude into the conversation about the landfill development. Just in that, we have limited agricultural land, and although solar development on agricultural land is not the most invasive type of development, and you can restore the land relatively easily down the road, it's still not ideal compared to land that is otherwise non-developable and has no other real benefit. So it's from a social standpoint, it's a better use of land to try to develop on a landfill or a toxic piece of land. So again, why is landfill PV development a good idea? Well, better land use than agriculture and forests and wetlands. There's hundreds of thousands of acres of closed landfills in the US. A lot of these properties are a financial drain to the owner of the property. They cost money ongoingly without any cash flow, income behind them. So it's dovetails nicely into what this presentation is about, which is creating a stronger, more resilient community, and prioritizing land like landfills to develop solar on is in alignment with creating stronger and more resilient communities over using agricultural or forest lands. So what are some of the benefits to municipalities? There's a lot of benefits, really, and not just landfill solar, but really all different types of solar developments. There's financial benefits to municipalities, but a PPA for a municipality to build their own system, essentially, and enter into a power purchase agreement with a developer to basically engineer, develop, permit the project, construct the project, and then operate and maintain the project. And those are good deals. We've done several of those around the state over the years, and our customers have reported very, very high savings, especially now with the current price of electricity in the last couple of years. So they're anywhere from 30 to 50% savings are what is being reported back to us from the different projects that we built in the past few years. So that's one really good option for a town. One of the big benefits there is just that the town has no capital expense in the project. Another developer assumes all of that responsibility, and the town's only real commitment or risk in the whole deal is the commitment of the 25-year power purchase agreement. So it's really a strong way of developing solar for municipalities. It allows the federal incentives to be utilized well. Now that the legislation has changed to allow for municipalities to better use that, PPAs may not make as much sense for certain municipalities at this point, but it does still address the upfront capital expenditure, which can be a big hurdle for a lot of customers. So another way to create benefit through solar development for municipalities is through land lease agreements. So if there's land that the municipality isn't using, a landfill that's not being used, and maybe they don't need power generation for themselves or aren't interested in that, but still want to have some additional income stream, that's a potential way of doing it, is to lease the property to another developer that will pay for typically a per acreage price per year. And then another option is municipalities making landfills or other community or other municipally owned land available to the community. I've been involved with a few examples of this, where actually the town of Tremont, who has an existing municipal solar array, is interested in adding more solar to their landfill to allow that generation to be available to their local community members. So there's examples of community benefited landfill projects happening, just like Norway. So moving on here, so a few design considerations when we're talking about solar arrays on landfills. One of the biggest considerations is that the system needs to be ballast mounted. It's a big concern to damage the existing cap of the landfill. It's an impermeable cap. The whole purpose of it is to keep groundwater from leaching down into the buried waste, and then eventually leaching out of that into the groundwater system. So during construction and when designing these systems and developing them, it's really important to kind of keep that at the forefront of what exactly you're working on top of. This is an image of what a kind of a typical cover section of a closed landfill would look like. Shows existing grade, and it shows loam and seed coverage. It shows the 18 inches of cap material, cover material, which is typically a clay material, and then it just shows the municipal waste below that. So just so everybody can understand how the cap is made up. This is a drawing of a gas control vent system. So this is another important consideration during these developments and construction in regards to the safety of the gas. It's an explosive gas, so it could potentially have negative effects if it weren't if the gas were to get into any pathway of the electrical system. So that's a consideration to make, as well as caring for the gas system while the construction is taking place. So creating adequate distances around the vents, as well as utilizing machinery that's not too heavy while actually building the system. Some other factors and considerations. So age of the landfill, what the history of the landfill is, that always comes into play. Understanding, the history of the property and what's gone on there over time, and how the closure went and what materials were used and things like that are important variables to consider throughout the process. Understanding how much usable acreage there is to develop on. Not all landfills have usable acreage. They might be quite large, but there might be only certain sections of the landfill that are good to use. Slope is a big consideration. It's too steep of a landfill is not practical to build on top of. So the slope has to be typically below a 10% grade. So cap characteristics, just what the materials are made up of. Knowing what the landfill maintenance requirements are. Who's liable for the landfill? Typically, it's the municipality, in that they're the ones that have the license with the DEP. Site control, so making sure that there's proper agreements in place to protect the project as it moves forward. Solar resource, so just understanding how much available energy is available at the site. Solar access and shading, so if there's any shading considerations at the site, which usually that's another reason that landfills are a great place to put solar, is that there's often no trees anywhere nearby. So there's lots of solar access there. Another important consideration is the distance to the transmission and distribution lines, and then as well as what the available capacity of the transmission and distribution lines are, as well as interconnection costs. And then how many other projects might be existent on the circuit that the project is looking to interconnect to. What the different net metering policies are. So currently in Maine, there's 2 different crediting pathways. And probably for most landfill projects, not all, but some, depends on, I guess, if it's net metered or more of a, approaching a utility scale project, whether you would go with a traditional kilowatt hour crediting or bill tariff crediting, which is a monetary credit value. I'm sorry about that. If there's any solar, any renewable energy credits available to play into the finances of the development. So that, and as well as if this is for a municipality, if the municipality were interested in actually retaining the RECs, as opposed to allowing the developer to sell them. And that's generally possible. It's just usually, it would require a slightly higher cost of electricity in order to do that. What the prices of electricity are currently and projected to be into the future, and if there's any on-site existing load, and then obviously project cost. So these are some of the major considerations and factors in developing any solar project, but especially a landfill project. I have a video that I'll play here next. This just gives a quick overview of, what construction might look like. This is an image of actually that same video. This is the town of Waldoboro's solar array. This has been in since 2017 and is doing great. It's been producing a lot of power over the past several years, and the town is actually moving forward and interested in purchasing the system. They're currently in a power purchase agreement. So that has tracked well over the past 5, almost 6 years now. This is a photo of a project we did for the town of Tremont that I was talking about earlier. Notice one thing that stands out here well is there's erosion control barrier that goes around the existing construction. You can kind of see that from this image. That'd be standard for any project on a landfill. There's different creative ways to go about those things. And I'll play another quick video here. This is actually Oakland, which I guess I wasn't clear that we were doing a case study on Oakland, but quick image of Oakland. And let's see, I think one other video that I probably will not play just in lieu of time. So that's about it for me.
Thank you, Danny.
No
I love
problem.
the videos. They were a good way to give us some visual insight into the solar panels. And
Awesome.
so next we are moving on to Matt's slides.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Matt Young. I'm actually very familiar with all of the sites that they've shown you today so far, other than Oakland. I haven't been out to the Oakland site since development started. So let's just get right to it. Next slide, Zach. So this is the Wyndham landfill. This is yet another landfill that's been built out with solar. And they did a very good job. All right. So I come into play on these sites if a solar development is interested in getting within 100 feet of the buried waste of so a solid waste facility. So any site that wants to be within 100 feet of the solid waste needs to obtain a variance, and that variance ends up being a license where all of the aspects of the project gets written down and documented. Next slide. So we have a guidance document online for the department, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just a bullet list for towns or developers to get a grasp on what the expectation is for applying and getting your license to put the solar on the landfills. The whole point of this is to protect the investment in the landfill cover that the state and municipality have put into the site over the years. So as long as that mindset is followed through, then these projects tend to go fairly smoothly. So one of the biggest things that I find helps these projects move along is if all of the players get out on the landfill and understand what the landfill has to offer and what it might not have that isn't necessarily as obvious from just topo maps. So if there's a goal for putting solar on a steep part of the slope, then that requires a higher level engineering than your standard 2 to 5 or 8% grades. And that's something that needs to be talked over in quite a bit of depth with the developer, because that ends up being a very difficult thing to do. Also, fencing ends up being a bit of a rub. So if you have your people that do maintenance on the landfill available to do the walkthrough, and they're involved in the conversation on how fencing and organization of the array is supposed to occur, then they can help avert problems that might come up later, like creating traps for your tractor or your lawnmower, putting the fencing at the toe of a steep slope that just can't be mowed side grade. So the tractor becomes a dead end at the bottom. Now, easy things to fix, but not once the fencing or the arrays are in place. We're getting a lot of requests for hanging cables instead of burying them. So burying them means the tractor can go over the top, but when they're hung, they're only a 1.5 feet, 2 feet up. And it's very easy for a developer who's worried about efficiency and electrical engineering to not worry about creating dead zones where maintenance equipment can't go through. So the next big step is to do the file review for the landfill to make sure that the financial group has access, the legal group has access, all of the players that come in on these larger projects, so they can know the risk and range of the site for their project, for at least their aspect of the project. So a file review is occasionally fairly time intensive. Sometimes I can get it done for a town, but sometimes the file is managed by the archive. So you have to go into the state archive to review any file and scan what you need. So that's time that needs to be dealt with or planned out ahead of time. All right, next. So one of the first things that we will look at in the application is that project description. The description requirements are laid out in the checklist, and it helps to be thorough. And also, if there are changes that are required, even for like minor ones through construction, you can just request change orders. But if the plan is still developing and you don't have complete engineering information, then what we'll agree to is getting a license in place, but requiring a condition compliance to come in afterward once all the engineering is done. And that's a total extra licensing step, but some projects are willing to do that, and because financing or municipal approval is contingent on getting a license. So if a condition compliance is necessary, then that's also a time sensitive thing that you have to tie into your project expectations. All right, next. All right, so a lot of people miss out on the need for stamped plans. So any civil type of engineering that comes through for review and approval by the state needs to be stamped by a licensed state of Maine professional engineer. The electrical engineering is not necessary for that, but any of the civil aspects. need to be stamped by a state of Maine person, or if it's a geological evaluation, a certified geologist in the state of Maine. And the site surveys that are being done, oftentimes to save money, the site survey will just be for the cap of the landfill. And that's being found to be inadequate for the larger evaluations like the stormwater. So please make sure that your site survey is done in a wide enough scale to capture all of the things that need to happen from that site survey. All right, next. So the plans that come in for the whole system, that's we need to understand all of the aspects. So not just the planned array, but your roads coming in, your bridges, if you're going to do any sort of roads on the landfill, we need to see those. And we need to see any sort of vaults that are going to be put in. CMP really seems to push hard for subterranean vaults, which are inherently not the best idea around a landfill that produces gas. So we ask for a lot of plans around those sort of things to make sure that gas is being dealt with, so you don't have buildup points. So for safety aspects. So and also concrete washouts. Those need to be dealt with on sites. So not on the landfill, but off. There needs to be a plan for dealing with how to wash out the concrete trucks on site. And next. All right. Danny did deal with this quite a bit, and he's no stranger to it. So the landfill gas systems at these landfills range pretty widely. So getting on site and knowing what was supposed to be there and what is there is important. These vents are the vast majority of sites that will be asking for solar just have passive gas management. So it's just candy cane sticking up in a field. We ask for a 10-foot separation. So as long as you stay outside of that 10-foot separation with all your equipment, we don't ask for any further information. That's just assumed to be the safe distance. Now, we can approve something within 10 feet, but we'll need to see engineering on how safety is built into that. Also, if there's broken vents or if a system is just not functioning, we can come out and do a larger assessment. That's something the department has been willing and able to do, mostly just me, but we've been willing to do for most all of the sites so far. All right, next. All right, and that's me doing, I believe that's Westbrook. So we have a gas analyzer where we can sample different points in the soil cap to make sure there aren't gas weak spots, and we can assess the system before construction happens to make sure everything's working adequately. And if it isn't, we can set up a plan to remediate the site to get valid gas mitigation on site. And in the past, we've been accepting of removing the vents that aren't working. So that will improve the surface area where panels can go, and also improve the gas mitigation. All right, next. So this is just the next step of gas mitigation. If there is no gas system and there is no gas signs of gas coming through the cap with eroding soils or a dead grass, then the system can go forward without any concern of landfill gas. But there's always concern if you start digging into the ground. Okay, next. So the settlement and stability assessment is important, and I can send out like a guidance sheet if somebody's trying to get a group to do one for them. There are many levels of doing this sort of assessment, but we find as soon as the engineers start stamping them, then they tend to be thorough enough for the department to review. These things need they need snow load and wind and the focused analysis to make sure that the weight of these sites aren't going to create unexpected points for settlement. All right, next. Oh, a lot of the data points that the engineering group is going to need do come from the file review. So that would be the existing waste mass and the cover system. Those things are definitely in the file, and so that's important for whoever's going forward with this to have that information. All right, next. If there is a membrane in the cover for these sites, then the expectation from the department is that there will be a limit for settlement in the license, but there is no monitoring requirement as of right now for settlement at sites without membranes like geomembranes or a plastic liner up in the cover. All right, next. So stormwater control. It normally needs to be a CAD level review, but we can take part in that conversation if the developer sees not a need for doing a higher level stormwater management evaluation for the site. All right, next to erosion. So there's the department's BMPs. I think they were last updated in 2016. If those are followed, we tend to be in a good place. The understanding of how construction is to be completed at the site should educate how the BMPs for erosion control are managed. So we see quite a few places that the erosion control berms get run over by equipment because the equipment can't turn in an adequate area that the berms gave them. So they just run them over and the berms are useless. So that's an easy thing to fix by just not allowing it to happen in the first place. All right, next. So inspection and maintenance needs to be planned out. That's something that needs to be identified at the agreement between the municipality and the developers. You know, who's going to be doing the inspection, who's going to be doing the maintenance for what. You know, make sure you understand if the municipality is going to be doing the mowing, it needs to happen at least annually, and oftentimes, maintenance is going to take longer and be a little bit more difficult with structures. You're not just mowing a field anymore. Okay, so I need to be able to review the technical and financial abilities of the team putting this site on. So make sure that all of the finances for the site are being acknowledged in the application. And then say where the finances are going to come from and say how much it's actually going to be. And then the technical ability is pretty straightforward. That just lay out who the partners are and how they're going to be able to help move the system along to development. All right. So the schedule can be fairly loose, but it does need to exist. And there's obvious when you're dealing with multiple parties, there's going to be some potential delays, but it's important to submit the schedule with the application. So solar on landfill is a bit of a different animal in that it does not require the actual decommissioning license that land-based solar arrays do. We still have a decommissioning section in the license, and potentially over the next couple of years, that part of the license will get more in line with the decommissioning license that's in existence. But right now, we're just asking for a statement that if you hold off, if you don't produce power for 2 continuous years, then the municipality will ensure that solar panels will be removed and the landfill brought back to its original condition. And that's something that would behoove the municipality to have in any sort of agreement they have with the developers. Okay, so I don't check on notification to the public because it's not actually required, but it does tend to be preferred, and it's a good shows good faith for the municipality to be able to do a little bit of notification to the public. All right, and this is a nice site in Belfast. This was the first municipal landfill solar site, and it's still working just fine. Any questions at all, feel free to give me a call, and I should be able to answer them or give you to the appropriate group that can answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thanks again to Scott and Danny for their presentations. We'll now move on to questions. People who want to ask verbally can raise their Zoom hands or physical hands and then come off of mute to ask. We did have one question that was put into the chat from Kay saying, can a solar field coexist on the same site with a landfill gas to energy system, or would they need to exist separately? Danny did reply back and said that he would imagine the two could be developed together, but it would boil down to site factors. I'm not sure if that needs to be addressed any further, or that was if Kay had any more questions, but if not, I mean, we can move into live questions as well.
Well, Olivia, I don't, this is Matt. I don't know of anything that would stop solar and gas power generation from being on the same site, other than the systems just not being able to be handled on the on the power conveyance side.
Okay, thank you.
Matthew, I'm just curious, do we have any landfills in Maine now that are producing gas commercially?
Commercially, I don't know. I don't know how that would be. I know Old Town is had some plans of piping gas to the university, but I'm not sure what commercial gas production would even look like. We've got some people out there with turbines.
It just seems like if we've got methane escaping into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, if we could turn that around and collect it and use it to generate electricity or some other sort of heating or something, that would be good. And integrate it with solar. Seems like a kind of an aspirational thing for us.
It is. It tends to be rather difficult for a small state, small landfills. That gets really cold, but yeah, other states are definitely doing that.
Do we have data on how much methane is coming out of these coming out of these landfills across the state? And what percentage of our greenhouse gas emissions that would be?
I don't know. I deal with some pretty small sites. The understanding is it's not a very high percentage, but I don't know the numbers.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just had one comment about what Danny was talking about with the trying to protect our ag land, and with this kind of big solar rush that we've had. Our energy working group, which is also Ted, who's on the call here as part of that, we've been talking a lot about agrivoltaics and looking at ways to integrate solar with agriculture on some of our, if there's optimal solar sites, is there a way to do that without and even enhance the site's ability to produce food, whether it's grazing opportunities or growing things, shade tolerant crops, or there's been some talk about that being able to reduce irrigation needs. And I've seen, like, under solar trackers, we have one over at our high school that we actually grow better grass under that tracker than we do out in the open, and 20% shade is known to produce better pasture. So I've seen some big projects where they use single axis trackers. I don't know, Danny, if you have any experience with those, but they were putting a big one out in Fairfield, Iowa when I was teaching out there, and they were using the spaces in between to graze. And then those single axis trackers can all be set vertically to maintain the rows in between, but then gone back to there's an east, they start out in the east and go to the west during the day. So something that I think Maine could maybe do more with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have actually any hands-on experience with single axis trackers. Certainly looked at quite a few of them. Looked at the the product drawings and things like that. But yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, couple things. I think what other people's experiences have gleaned is that using sheep is a better breed of animal over goats or cows or any other larger animals. Sheep seem to not want to get into climbing around on the solar equipment, and do a great job at mowing down the grass. So they seem to rise to the top in terms of what animals you might use to graze at a site. And you're right about the shade, the low shade factor, and more shade tolerant crops thriving underneath solar arrays. I don't know. I've heard of this from other folks, although I don't have any direct case studies or examples to look at to see where that's actually proving itself. But I think it's really interesting because you know, I mean, there's, especially when solar's going into agricultural land, because we really, you know, if we step back and look at what's probably best for society, it's probably to promote those lands to grow food locally. And that's challenging when it boils down to the financial you know, aspect of it all, because if a farmer can put solar on their land and make more money, then they can working hard on the land, or, you know, at least have income that way without working hard on the land, then that's very attractive, and it's hard to overcome that through promoting, you know, food growth. So you know, socially, it's something we should look closer at in terms of the future. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, when a farmer can get $100 an acre for hay and $1,500 an acre a year for a solar farm, that's not a hard decision for them to make. The older farmers that are aging out, it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, the one thing that I think is pretty well understood is that solar development on farmland is pretty, you know, non-invasive, comparatively speaking, to other types of development. You know, at the end of its useful lifespan, you can really come in there and kind of pop everything out of the ground, and the soils are, you know, disturbed a little bit, but not to a point where they I think been destroyed or anything like that. And so I think it's, you know, from that standpoint, it's not awful, but from the standpoint of that, you know, we really need as much local food growth as we can get. You know, we really should be prioritizing that way.
Right. But if it does keep the farm viable and not sold for development, then that's not bad either.
Right.
We've got a couple farmers in our area that we've reached out to on our community solar project, and they've got lots of land, and they've got a few areas on their farms that just aren't productive. And, you know, they know that, and they also have, you know, high energy loads. So, you know, they're running a greenhouse or something like that. So identifying on those farms, the sites that make the most sense, you know, rather than just coming in, you know, it's a lot of the big developers just come in and they're not taking those things into consideration, looking at the soils and,
yeah, it's really tricky, you know, because I think, you know, the legislation that occurred really opened up the market. And so the free market went about its business and developed projects. And so without more stringent guidance or incentives around, you know, certain types of property to develop, you know, it happens organically where, you know, it happens anywhere it can happen, really. So it really boils down to, I think, legislative guidance or incentives in order to kind of, you know, promote the free market to engage that way. Because the reality is that building on solar landfills is inherently more expensive. You know, you have a higher expense to get the project done from multiple standpoints. So there needs to be a reason as to why you would go that route over a big open field, you know.
well, like you said, societally, there's plenty of reasons. Financially, maybe not so much. So incentivizing that kind of stuff is going to be part of the.
Those are the social gaps we have to bridge, you know.
I'll just throw out that I'm sure you're aware of the Maine Audubon, and I believe it was Maine Farmland Trust have this solar siting tool that they've been working on that's pretty robust.
Yeah.
And I can see, you know, we're part of the Environmental Priorities Coalition, and this comes up occasionally. Like I could see at some point some guidance, legislature, you know, some policy around like requiring a deeper kind of site analysis in terms of biodiversity stuff, you know, Class A soils, that kind of stuff, to make sure that we're not citing these things in places where they're going to do a lot of damage.
Right.
I have a question for Danny and Scott. Have there been any challenges that you guys have observed working with with towns? I mean, if there have been challenges, I didn't know from your perspective what that looked like.
I mean, there's always challenges, I'd say, but specific challenges to landfill development. I mean, I guess nothing that's too notable that has been really. I mean, every project I've worked on has had, they've had little individual challenges, but nothing common to one another, I'd say, that would, that stopped the project or caused it to track a more, difficult development time frame or anything like that. I mean, it really boils down to a couple big things. It's the utility interconnection. So that's, you really don't have a green light until you have that green light. And then also the DEP permit. So those are the two main, factors of any landfill development. And so if and you kind of track those in parallel typically. But yeah, I don't know about you, Scott, if you can think of any, challenges.
Yeah, just with Norway, just a couple of things come to mind. One is that, it would have been great for the town if the town could have owned that project and locked in their energy costs over time. I think there was a lot of just unease with the select board in our town to be like, yeah, we're not too sure about this, but if the developer's going to take all the risk and we're going to save, get a discount on our power and we don't have to deal with the landfill, great. But to take that to that next level where the town would really have owned the project would have benefited the town more over the long haul. That was a little harder of a sell. So that's, I think, one thing that if we can come up with a better, a good model for towns, they can say, oh, look, this is a 25-year project. This is a 10-year financing program. We get the Maine Green Bank involved, or some easy financing thing that the towns could say, oh, we're going to just level out our energy costs for the next 10 years and then just have our power generation for basically just maintenance costs for the rest of the life of the thing. That would probably have saved the town, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 30 years. The other thing is that the town has another landfill that's their like a bulky waste landfill, and that the problem there is it was poorly, I think, poorly capped. It's very rough, and it's also at the end of this really long road without any power out there. So that's been I think there's some of these landfills probably are in places where it's going to be very costly to bring transmission lines in.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I think that's a major factor, really, especially on smaller projects. They just can't afford a lot of interconnection expense. So having 3-phase power right there is really pretty critical. Slightly larger projects have a little bit more bandwidth to afford a little more on the interconnection, and maybe can bring power in a half a mile or something like that.
To be honest, I think that Norway project, I've talked with the developer, I've kind of gotten to know him over the years, what we've been working on this, and he's like, it's kind of like not something they're going to really make money on. More of like a good PR for them, a good community project. We're getting a lot of local businesses up on solar and saving money on their power, but it's at that size. It's like the whole site's like just a little under 2 acres, I think. And all the hassles of, like you said, extra expense of the ballasted system and dealing with the permitting, and it's right there on the little Andro. So there's got to be really careful about wastewater. I think it's not a big money maker for them, but something that they feel is like a, good, social grease for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's ways to kind of go about that. I didn't really get into that in my talk so much, but just around the construction in general, like one thing that we've done is we try to utilize a lower weight ballast block that we can handle with smaller equipment. So, which is, good for the cap and for just the weight of, everything on top of the cap. So that's really good. And then also having them be lighter weight, it just, the construction, pretty much just boils down to smaller equipment, and it's less invasive to the whole thing. We've also found like keeping vegetation, not keeping all the grass, letting the grass kind of be as long as it can be when you start construction is really good in terms of erosion control, because it just ultimately gets kind of eaten up throughout the construction process, but it adds another layer of erosion control and slows down that inevitable outcome. So those have been really good, useful things. Matt's helped us a lot around just understanding what we are working on top of and the different variables around erosion and settlement and the importance of this stuff. And so his knowledge has been very, very great for our success in the projects that we've done. He's really helped us understand just how to go about them the right way.
Matt, did you work with UGE on that project in Norway, on the permitting there?
Yes, still am.
Mhm.
They had some bumps in the road for sure, but they seem to be pretty smooth now.
Great, good to know.
There any other questions? Okay, well, I think we can wrap everything up.
I have one quick question actually while we're talking here. So Matt, do you have anything to say around just municipalities that want to add additional solar to their existing landfill? If they already have a project and they want to add additional solar, in that process, is it pretty much the same as applying for a new project on a landfill?
Unless they planned for it ahead of time, like I believe Tremont set up their phase 1 and phase 2 in their initial application. So I believe they'd be green lighted right through.
Yeah.
But no, it's basically the same conversation held twice. Like South Portland's been and they've built out twice now. So it's more straightforward because most of the information's been found. So it's much more of just figure out what you want and the engineering for what you want to do, and then the licensing comes pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Well, thank you again to Scott, Danny, and Matt for your presentations. I would really appreciate that. Yeah, and I hope everyone has a good day.
All right. Thank you, Olivia.
Oh.
Thank you.